Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I have to apologize a bit, the lighting is kind of bad right now because usually I record in earlier in the day and it's now dark outside, so I only have my studio light here. So the lighting isn't as good as usually, but it should still be enough. So right here we have yet another GTX 580. I have a track record of picking these up. And I actually have enough 580s so that I only really pick them up when they're kind of special. And that's the case with this one. So, you can already see on the fans, it says KFA2. For those that don't know, KFA2 is GALAX. They sell their cards under this name in Europe because apparently there was like GALAX used to be called Galaxy. And Samsung had a problem with that. They failed a lawsuit or something because of Samsung Galaxy against Galaxy at the time, so they rebranded to GALAX, but that still wasn't enough, so they just made a second brand, which is KFA2, to sell their stuff in Europe. And then everything else is sold as GALAX in the US and Asia. So yeah, this is a European card, and what this is a GTX 580 Hall of Fame, more or less. It's not really what you typically expect from a Hall of Fame card, because I think it's the first one they ever made. And really the only Hall of Fame thing about it is this little thing right here. So yeah, it does say Hall of Fame right there, so that yeah, there is a Hall of Fame card, but other than that, it's not all that great actually. But it's a bit special because so this GTX 580 is, I've been told, and basically I've been told that this is the only GTX 580 that uses actual power stages for its VRM. So I don't know if there's even one that uses the RMOSes, like basically every other GTX 580 uses discrete MOSFETs like the memory VRM over here. So that's the thing that makes it special, because this is using actual power stages. In fact, it's using IR3550 amps. Let me just take a look at that. Yep, those are IR3550 amps. So those are 60 amp POW IR, like power stages, but because International Rectified, I call it POW IR stage. And each of these do 60 amps, so we get a theoretical max of 360 amps in this VRM, which isn't all that great. It's just a 6-phase. The reference board is a 6-phase. Actually, this is pretty much a reference board. The memory VRM and the output filter is basically complete reference. Also, this capacitor layout over here is reference, like the 6 and the 8 pin, that's from the reference card. The output filter here on the back and everything that goes around here behind the memory chips and the core, that's all reference. Even the controller is the same controller that you get on the reference card, which is the CHA8266. So this card is not all that custom. So really the only special parts about it is its Hall of Fame status and the fact that it has power stages, which back then was a pretty rare thing. And yeah, there's a few more features. I guess we can go over that. So you have this connector right here. I didn't get that with the card, but what you can connect here is like a button panel. It's I forgot what it's called, like the GALAX Hall of Fame OC panel or something like that. Basically, some GALAX cards have this connector. Actually, the GTX 460 WHDI might also have this. But basically you can connect a button panel to this, and with that button panel you could control the voltages on the card, which I guess is pretty neat, because it's a Hall of Fame card, and Hall of Fame cards are they are a brand that still exists. Hall of Fame and Kingpin cards are basically the only remaining proper extreme overclocking brands of graphics cards, and Hall of Fame is actually one that has improved over the years. Because if you look at this is not all that special. It doesn't even have the signature white PCB that Hall of Fame cards usually have. I think they also did that on like a 2070. But like, yeah, most Hall of Fame, like most other Hall of Fame cards have a white PCB. This one sadly doesn't. That would have been really cool. But yeah, this comes with a matte black PCB. At least the heatsink looks kind of nice. Like it has this transparency thing going on. It even has RGB. Like the white part here, that lights up. Or maybe, I guess it's only B, because that's just a 2-pin header, so this is just blue LEDs. But yeah, like the heatsink looks pretty nice. So I give it that. Also, these fans, again, look like the same fans we have on the 970 Omega and the Zalman VF3000 heatsink. So this one might also be a Zalman-made cooler. But yeah, like the heatsink looks pretty nice. I guess it has a nice amount of fins. The base plate looks nice. But yeah. Then of course we also have... This one does actually come with a backplate and a VRM heatsink. Like the VRM heatsink it's a nice feature because you can leave this on, which, I mean, that's to be expected from a overclocking focused card, because then, like when you overclock the card with like your LN2 port or like a phase change connected to it, you'll usually remove the backplate because the entire back of the card is gonna freeze over. And when your heatsink is like connected to the base plate or like needs the main heatsink to cool the VRM, that's just kind of bad. So it's nice to see that we have this dedicated base plate here that just screws onto the VRM. Nicely sized heatsink, gonna keep those power stages nice and cool. That you can use when, yeah, you overclock the card. And I might actually do that. Originally, I thought this card is just gonna like end up on my shelf. Like I have a shelf of like graphics cards that are like special that I show off. I thought this one's just gonna go onto that shelf because, you know, it's a Hall of Fame. Like it's by no means the best Hall of Fame. But hey, it is a Hall of Fame. And it has the power stage part. Like the VRM looks nice. It looks very modern. It's also really small. So yeah, but this one might actually do pretty well because like I booted it up, tested once, and actually this one has a really, really high ASIC quality. And it has Samsung memory, specifically Samsung G-Die, which I've only had once. From what I've seen, this one has negative code scaling and some very slight voltage scaling. So it's not the best. Samsung E-Die is usually better. But G-Die does clock really, really high without any mods. So like E-Die needs mods to clock as high as G-Die, but like scales better. So more or less you might end up at the same place with both of these chips, just that G-Die needs less modding. I don't know how G-Die does Sub-Zero. I haven't tested a card Sub-Zero yet with it. Maybe this one will be the first. Depending on how well it does on ambient. Like high ASIC quality and Samsung memory is by no means a guarantee that it's gonna overclock really well. Yeah. And I guess then the last kind of special part about the card is the outputs. So we have some quite modern outputs for a card from 2010. We have one display port and then 3 mini HDMI. I actually did get these bundled up cables with the card, so that's what they're for. Now I have mini HDMI cables. I also got this driver CD, which I guess is a nice touch, but I don't have... I might have a CD drive somewhere, but I don't have a PC that can use one. But yeah. And then there's this, I think this chip is for the outputs, it's related to that. Also, that chip is probably what this thermal pad is for, except that the thermal pad doesn't line up with the chip at all. So I don't really know what that's about, but yeah, I don't really know. I mean, other than that, it's a pretty normal card. Like, you can get good overclocking results on a reference card. It's just that usually, like, well, the reason why custom PCBs are usually better for overclocking is first, the VRM doesn't blow up, because reference NVIDIA designs usually are cutting it a bit too close for comfort to blowing up territory. And then, of course, you get a much better output filter on custom PCBs. Now, this card has slightly upgraded output filter compared to reference. So the actually the reference GTX 580 doesn't have these CAN type capacitors. The 480 has them, but the 580 doesn't. The 580 only has these few multi-layer ceramics here, which I think they added some too. I think the stock 580 has less of them. So it's slightly upgraded. And then on the back, like these capacitors you also get on the reference 580, but there's a few more multi-layer ceramics again, like they added some multi-layer ceramics to the card. And that's basically it. They also did add these two to the memory output VRM. I'm actually not sure what the reference VRM looks like on a 580. The 480 has 3 CAN type capacitors. This one just kind of has this 470 and then these 337s on the back. And then I think this one might also be connected to memory. I'm not entirely sure. And then this is core. So yeah, it's not too special. It's still better than reference, but not by much. Also, I see right now there's an unpopulated pad for switch right there. That's interesting. But I don't really know what that's supposed to maybe do. But yeah, so this is the oldest Hall of Fame card that I know of. Well, actually, there might have been a 460 Hall of Fame, and then there probably also was a 480 Hall of Fame, which might just be a reused PCB. Like this might just be the no, actually this has power shunts. 400 series didn't have those, so this is not a reused 480 PCB. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure then. I don't know if a 480 Hall of Fame exists. It might be fairly similar to this, it might be different. But this is one of the oldest Hall of Fame cards that I know of. And you can kind of see, like you can actually see the improvement. Like usually extreme overclocking brands, you know, like your Lightnings, your Matrix, Gigabyte SoC, like, okay, SoC is dead. Matrix and Lightning still get models sometimes, like there was a 2080 Ti for both of those. Gigabyte SoC pretty much died with the 600 series, I think. But yeah, so like you used to have all of these nice overclocking focused brands, and basically the only ones that are still around today and still have like cards that are actually for overclocking are like Kingpin, which used to be classified. So like it classified became Kingpin at some point. But like yeah, EVGA and Hall of Fame. Those are still brands that still like that. There's 3090s and 3090 Ti is gonna be as well. I've already seen the 3090 Ti Hall of Fame, and I think also a teaser for the Kingpin one. So those are basically the only two extreme overclocking brands that still get proper graphics cards to them. Whereas, well, Gigabyte SoC died a long time ago, and then Matrix and Lightning just get quite literally just this, like the normal PCB that they've already been using for like the Gaming X or like the Strix, and then with a different heatsink. Like the 2080 Ti Matrix was literally just a Strix with like an AIO cooler. And the 2080 Ti Lightning, I think, was slightly, like it was basically a Gaming X, and I think they added like a BIOS switch and then like maybe some voltage read points. Like not anything, like yeah, extreme overclocking features, but like not anything that actually helps. Not anything that's actually useful for extreme overclocking, because like BIOS switches are like, yeah, they're nice, but you can't do it without them. And voltage read points, usually voltage read points are kind of useless, because usually they just get a voltage read point that just goes to like the output of your VRM, and then you see the voltage at the output of your VRM. That's not what you want. You want the voltage like that goes into your core, so you want to measure like behind the core, because you're going to have a voltage drop in the power plane from the VRM to the core. Same goes for the memory chips. If you want your memory voltage, don't measure at the VRM, like measure at like this spot or this spot where it's like the furthest away, so you see how big your voltage drop is. So voltage read points are usually kind of useless, because usually they just show voltages like that. So even if a card has that, I usually don't use voltage read points. I just go with the multimeter like directly behind the core and see that. So yeah. I also don't see any connection points for, well, that might be it, but I don't think it is. So I don't see any I2C connections. You can hook up the EVC to the CRJ8266, which is what I'm probably gonna do for voltage control on this card if it does well enough on ambient, so that I say I might take it sub-zero. Other than that, well, this is the memory. Well, actually, one of these is the memory controller. What's that? Okay, that's the upper one is the memory controller. It's like your, you know, like a UP6210AG. Like I think this is just straight up the standard controller you get on a reference card. And then this, I don't know what that is. Might be for the LEDs. No idea though. And yeah. I mean, yeah, this one's gonna have, well, there's gonna be like I2C bus pins somewhere. Just gonna hook up through those. So yeah, that's kind of it for the GTX 580 Hall of Fame. Actually, I don't think they even call it a Hall of Fame officially. What does it say on the backplate? Yeah, they call it the XOC. So I guess Hall of Fame only became a thing with the 600 series. Like XOC is also a brand that's still around today. Like I have a 1070 XOC. But like that 1070 XOC doesn't have the Hall of Fame logo on it. So I guess Hall of Fame used to be just like a thing that they put, like it isn't part of the official product name for this one, but like it is, I'm not aware of a higher end card that they have. So this is the Hall of Fame. Or maybe there's like a higher bint version that is called Hall of Fame and uses the same PCB. Don't know. Anyway, I think one last thing that I could show off is just the contrast to the GTX 580 SoC. Like speaking of SoC, I have one of those as well. And just to kind of show off the contrast, because these cards have like very different design philosophies. Because like GALAX went with strong phases, and Gigabyte went with more phases, more better. So the Gigabyte card here quite literally has twice as many vCore phases as this one. This has 12 phases, this has 6. And yeah. And then Gigabyte, because they have so many phases, they went with really, really cheap MOSFETs, like one MOSFET on the front, 4921Ns, and then I think the others are also 4921Ns. Yep, they're all 4921Ns. They didn't even bother having different high or low side MOSFETs, they just went with 4921Ns on everything. Put 2 of them on the back because, I mean, you can still use your PCB as a heatsink, but there's no cooling that goes over these on the back. There's heatsink that goes on the front, but the back is completely naked on the card. So, yeah, I mean, you don't have to cool your MOSFETs if you have enough phases. So, that's just kind of the contrast. So, this one, really good components, like IR3550s, like 60 amps, proper power stages, like really, really good power stages, with a pretty decent heatsink. And the cooler doesn't look that bad either. Also, the backplate has some heat sinking for the VRM. And they also put a thermal pad for the controller. I don't really know that that does anything. Also, it has the GTX 480 holes in it. So, there might have been a 480 Hall of Fame. Anyway. Yeah, so that's just kind of the 2 different design methodologies of just like make the most of the phases we've got, or just make more phases. That's just kind of it. Also, this card has more, like this card has a BIOS switch, and it has like, that should be voltage read points, and stuff, yeah. This also has phase running indicators. Anyway. I still kind of like the card, like it's interesting because of the power stage part, and now I have a Hall of Fame card. That's just kind of it. I'm gonna test it. I'll put it on my, like I don't know if I mentioned it before, I am rerunning all my GPU binning stuff because now I'm doing, like, I used to just run the card however I got it with like whatever heatsink it came attached with, which usually the stock heatsink, sometimes a custom heatsink. Sometimes I ran them on water when they didn't come with any heatsink. That's just kind of bad because then I'm testing just how good is the card itself. And some cards are just getting an unfair advantage if they don't have the stock heatsink, so I thought I'm just gonna rerun everything on my water cooler because that's the same cooling on everything, so now everything is temperature normalized. So I'm gonna be factoring that card into that. And I think I've rambled on for enough time now. Still an interesting card. The VRM could be stronger, the output filter could be better. It's interesting though that back then Hall of Fame was actually weaker than it is now, which is rare. Because like Classified Kingpin always was really, really overkill. But like if you look at a Hall of Fame card now, it's just absolutely crazy just how much like VRM and output filtering they have. Whereas this one is like barely better than reference actually. We'll see how it does when I run the card. If it's good enough, if it does good enough on ambient, you can expect another Sub-Zero overclocking video on this, just like for the 970 Omega. So stay tuned for that. Unless I don't do it, then, well, if there's no video in the next 2 weeks on the card, then you can just guess that it didn't do well and it's just gonna be sitting on my shelf to look at. So anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.